Are you ready?
Starting now?
Oh, now you just messed it up, you knob. God, you know that the shit that we go through for this, huh?
I know. Fuckers better appreciate it. When we started, we were just like, yeah, we're just going to do this, man. You know, shoot our wad into the wind and see what happens. What's the title of this podcast again?
I don't know. I don't know. Something with a penis, I guess.
Right.
Our fucking faces are everywhere now.
Right.
You know, but
You're welcome, ladies.
Right. Popular with the ladies. Right. Oh, I'm not even going to apologize because hopefully it sounds fucking hilarious.
Yeah, totally. This is fucking explicit now.
The explicit button. Let me use my finger.
La, 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 la.
It is time for another episode of Sober, Not Mature. And that episode starts now. All right, everyone. Welcome once again to another episode of Sober, Not Mature. And as always, if everyone or anyone has been paying attention, we do have a guest tonight. So first thing I want to do is I do want to have our guest introduce himself real quick. Just give us your name, where you're from, just a brief introduction, and then we'll get started.
Hey, my name is Gary B. I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina tonight.
Nice. Charlotte, North Carolina. So that happens to be one of the places I want to visit at some point. Just curiosity, how's the weather there right now? Is it like super hot?
No, actually, it's cooled off recently. It does get hot in the summer, but we've had a relatively mild summer as opposed to normal. But I like it hot and humid because I'm crazy like that. But the fall weather has come in. It's very nice. It's a nice place to live.
Yeah, well, it beats the hell out of. I lived in Wisconsin for years. I lived in Ohio. Mike lives in Cleveland. I'm in Indiana. The winters absolutely blow in these areas, right, Mike?
No, they're wonderful. I love it.
Okay,
it's a winter wonderland.
Yeah, right. So, but anyhow, I sit there every time we talk to somebody who's from a nice area. I'm like, how's the weather? Is it beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in upstate New York, so I've done my time in the cold.
Okay.
Yes. I grew up south of Rochester, New York.
Okay.
And I went to school in Potsdam. So that's an hour and a half south of Montreal, Canada. And the average temperature during the school year is -10. So I've done my time.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you that. We actually had on our mom's side, and I don't even know if you knew this, Mike, but we had family that lived or actually came from Oswego, New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you know where that's at, but
I do.
Yeah, that's by Fort Ontario, because we used to, when we visit family up there, we used to go and actually climb the wall and play inside this old abandoned fort. It's pretty fucking cool. So, but anyhow, as always, that's a tangent. But you've listened to us. You do not follow us on social media because, from what I understand, you do not have social media, but you've listened to us. So you definitely know how this whole thing that we do goes. But Mike does a pretty goddamn good job of explaining what we're looking for and what our quote unquote format is. So, Mike?
Right. Well, Gary, we know, I'm sure you've heard this before. We know how to fuck up our lives. We know how to fuck up the lives of everybody around us. We don't care about that. We know how to do it already. We're interested in the solution.
Excellent. And that's one of the reasons why I listen to you guys.
Yeah, well, and you know, I mean, people give us a background, that's cool. You know, let us know how you got to where you are, but right. we don't want to go through an hour of drunk stories because we've all been there. So
we've got plenty of them ourselves.
Correct, and I've definitely earned my seat in AA. So,
well, you know what? It's your turn to tell us about that, Gary. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, my sobriety date is November 19th, 2017. I was born in a small town south of Rochester, New York, called Hornell with an H, not a C. And I do want to give a little context before I get into the solution and how I got sober.
Absolutely.
And how I stay sober. When I was growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 2. They were quite young when they had me. They were both 18. And my mom got remarried when I was 5, and my father got remarried when I was 7, and it could be 3 and 5. I don't remember. Long story short, so I grew up with 2 sets of parents and 4 sets of grandparents, and I thought that that was the way everyone was. And so when I got to school and found out that most kids only had 2 parents, not 2 sets of parents, and didn't switch back and forth, that was odd to me. Um, but I lived with my mom and my stepfather, who I call my dad, and they they were really good to me. My stepfather had an anger issue and would be quite violent but not abusive when we were kids. And so when I was 10, I decided to move in with my real father and my stepmother. And little did I know I was going from the frying pan into the fire. And so I moved over there when I was 10, and about the time I was 12 was when the weird punishment started. And basically from 12 to I left when I was almost 18, so 17, there was emotional and physical abuse there. Um, and I'm not saying this for, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I just want to relate. If someone is out there, I want them to know that you can survive this and you can actually use it to your advantage. But I'll tell you some of the strange stuff. So the first one that I remember was I had to take the garbage out every week. That was one of my chores, which is fine because we all had chores to do. And I forgot one week. So she strew the garbage all over my room, and I had to sit with that for a week. So I
Damn.
never forgot to take out the garbage again. And that tended to escalate. And it got worse over time. The other thing in the background was that she always told me that all of that stuff was my fault. The reason that she treated me the way that she did was because I was a bad person and would never make anything of myself. Um, and that just went on and on and on. And so I had a lot of negative thought loops in my head by the time I left there. And so eventually what happened was I got old enough to get a car and I had some freedom kind of thing because I could drive. And then I went and asked my mom and my stepfather if I could move back in with them. And I did that. And then about a month later, I realized that I could have left a long time ago and got really, really fucking angry. And so angry that I just couldn't I couldn't even talk to people. Like at work, I would just shake. If anyone looked at me cross-eyed, I just want to punch them. And that was the first round of therapy that I did. I went and told my mom I need some help, and the therapist and I did a lot of anger management, and we went through everything that had happened. I had to tell someone kind of all the stuff that had happened, and I was okay with it. Um, and it was around that time that I probably had my first drink. And I will tell you that it took away all those negative thought loops in my head, and
Mm-hmm.
it allowed me a freedom, and I loved it. And there was never any one. There was this one is great. I want 5 bazillion. Um, and that's how I drank. I was more of a binge drinker. I drank a lot in college. I used it as reward because that's part of what I was taught as well. And then over time, it just got worse and worse. And then I started working in a bar, and that was kind of the end of the beginning. And about 7 years ago, um, I was drinking daily, round the clock. I was physically addicted to it
Mm-hmm.
and would shake. And I would play that tape in my head every night that you would drink if you went through what I went through too. And I'd play over and over all the things that she did, and also resentment against my real father who stood by and let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 things happened. I had 3 shots across the bow before I came into the program. The first one was my aunt, who is um, my father's sister, and I'm the oldest grandchild, and she's the youngest of my father's siblings. So we're only 5 years apart, and we kind of grew up together, and we're fairly close. During college, we had lost touch with each other, but I was trying to repair that relationship. And so I was visiting her and her husband and her 2 kids and just, drank my face off and basically blacked out. Like it was Friday and then it was Sunday. But during that time, I think I'd fallen on the floor or something. She said to me, if you are going to continue to act like this, you can no longer be with my family and I will not have you in my house. And I heard that. Like that
Mhm.
was a moment of clarity that they talk about. And that was the first one. The second one was my best friend, and her name is Karin. Um, she actually cut me out of her life. We became good friends. She was my work wife for a while, and she just stopped coming around and stopped answering my calls and my texts. And she sent me an email, which I didn't read because I was drunk, which I eventually read. And it basically said in there, like, I can't sit here and watch you kill yourself. She's
Right.
like, her father actually is in recovery and has been sober for a long time. And she's like, I can't go through it. And so that was the second one. And the third one was the last big bender that I had. I was at home alone. My partner had gone to New York, and I was home alone and had planned to have enough to last the weekend. And in a blackout, I called my sister. I still don't know to this day what I said. And my sister and I are very close, kind of like you are with, I think it's Kathy. Is that her name? I don't remember.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what happened was when I kind of came to on Monday and you're in that fog, I hate that anxiety, like looking through your phone, like, who did I call? So I called my sister and she didn't say hello. She answered the phone and she just said, "You need help."
Hmm.
And that was it. And so I contacted my doctor and I said, I need a therapist that specializes in alcoholism. And he gave me the name of a therapist that's at Anuvia here. And I know you don't live in Charlotte, but Anuvia is an IOP program here. It's a center. They have meetings there too, and they have the Alcathon there every year. But anyway, so I called Anuvia not knowing anything about the program and said, I need to make an appointment with this doctor. And they said, well, you can't. I was like, what do you mean I can't? I need help. And they're like, we have to do an intake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I set up a time to go do that. And I think it was like the next day. And I was still in a fog. And the poor guy that did the intake, he kept saying, are you sure this is what you need? And I was like, dude, I need to fucking stop drinking. Like, I cannot do this anymore. I don't care what it takes. I just need help. And he kept saying, okay. And they signed me up for IOP. Um, and then I didn't start IOP immediately. They did an orientation, which happened to be on a Tuesday, and a lot of the details are foggy, but I remember that was a Tuesday, and you'll know why in a minute. And so I went to this orientation, and the lady said, "You're going to have to go to meetings," and I was like, "What meetings?" And she goes, we want you to go to AA meetings. I was like, all right. And so I said, is there such a thing as gay AA? And she was like, yeah. So she Googled it. And there was a meeting that night. She said, you're in luck here. And she printed it out and handed it to me and said, it's called acceptance. It's on Tuesdays. And so I left and I drove to the meeting and I sat in the parking lot and I almost left. And I'll never forget the first one. And I was like, all right, I'll get out of the car because I didn't know where to go. I'll get out of the car and see what happens. And thankfully, there was a greeter outside. And he's like, hey, are you looking for a meeting? And I said, yes, without thinking. And they're like, come over here. So then it was too late. I was trapped. But
we had you.
That's right. And I'm very grateful for it. And that group is my home group. They meet
Nice.
on Tuesdays and Fridays, and it has been my home group for the last almost 6 years now. And when I do my service work and I always greet outside on purpose because
Right.
without someone being there, I would have gotten back in my car and left.
Right.
And that's how I got to my first meeting. And these people were laughing and they had fun and they were getting along. And I was like, you people are fucking sober. Like, what the hell? Like, isn't this awful? And, and they had so much fun and they were quite friendly, but I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
But I wanted what they had. And in the first meeting, they always read the promises at the end. That's what
Sure.
we close with. And you will find a new freedom and a new happiness was
Mhm.
what I wanted. And that's what made me come back. And they kept telling me, they're like, just come back to another meeting. I was like, okay. People like handing me their phone numbers. I'm like, what is this? Like, I don't even know you, you know, that the weird kind of thing.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And so I didn't do a 90 and 90, which I recommend to my sponsees now.
Mhm.
But I did go to probably 5 meetings a week, and it took me a long time to even like say hello to anybody. Like for the first 6 months, I would just sat and kind of listened, and also shared. But the first guy that said hello to me at that meeting, his name is Chris. He was my first sponsor. I asked him to sponsor me,
Mhm.
and we went through the steps, um, and it was good. Um, and a lot of times I like to tell my story based on the steps. And I don't know how you guys do things, but
Yeah.
so my step one work that I like to talk about. I was reviewing these the other day on the way back from Columbia. I had to drive down for work.
Homework.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot more stories to pick from now. When the
Right.
first year, let's see, I haven't told my story in a couple of years, so I got more there. But the way that I did step one, and so when I came, I'm going to back up a little. When I came, that's the part when I was doing this is so disjointed, but whatever.
It's the way we do it.
That's
Right.
right.
Never a
Alcoholics
straight
can put it
line.
together, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, at the same time that I joined AA on my own, I found a therapist to work with. And that was part of my God shots. And I've had so many; they're innumerable so far in my sober journey, and they're amazing. And so the first one obviously was the person in the parking lot that said hello to me, because otherwise I wouldn't end up in the program. I might have eventually, but I was glad that they did that. And the second one was I was just scrolling through like Psychology Today looking for a therapist, and I just put in people that were gay friendly and did alcoholism, and this guy popped up, and I was like, all right, that's cool. And I called him. Well, little did I know he specialized in trauma, and he does parts work. And we don't have to get into all the psychology behind that, but it was very helpful to dig into the trauma that had happened. And so I did both of those side by side. um, and I still do use therapy. I took a year off after I got to a point where I was like, I just want to live. Like I'm
Mhm.
good. I'm good. I've done a lot of work. I just want to live. Um, so anyway, back to my step one. He suggested, my therapist at the time. He suggested that I read Dry, and I think it's Augustine Burroughs. And when I read that book, that was the first time that someone drank like I did, thought about alcohol like I did, lived his life like I did, especially the last 2 years. Um, and it gave me a lot of anxiety. It was like looking in a mirror.
Mhm.
And so I discussed that both with my sponsor and my therapist. And then they suggested that I read it again. And when I did, and any time that anxiety came up, I would write down what it was about it that caused me the anxiety.
Mhm.
It was just, waking up and shaking and sweats for no reason and being anxious every day and, not remembering what I did the night before, apologizing to everybody, all those things like your stomach hurts. We all know what that is.
Mhm.
And I still have that list. Actually, I looked at it today. And throughout my sobriety, if I ever doubt that I'm an alcoholic, and there have been times I
Sure.
was like, I got this. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm good. I go back and read those. And I usually only get through about the first four. And I'm like, I don't want that shit again. There's
Right.
no fucking way. Um, and that's how I did my step one. So it's not, as much as I love AA and it's a big part of my life, there's a lot
Mhm.
of things I've done in recovery that aren't necessarily by the AA book, so to speak.
Mhm.
Although I respect the big book quite a bit.
Right.
Um, and I've read it once or twice. um, two came my step two was more came around over time. And one of the things that I remember that a sponsor told me was, just believe that I believe in a higher power until you figure out what your higher power is. So
Right.
I've
just
heard that
believe
once
in me.
before.
Yeah. And
Yep.
that's good advice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one I've given to mine. And so that's kind of how I did step 2. Organized religion and I do not get along.
Mm-hmm.
I, with having 4 sets of grandparents, one of them didn't go to church and the other 3 did. And they went to 3 different denominations, which they took me to. And at each one, they said something different about God.
Right.
So as a kid, I was very confused. And nothing against Catholics, but if you're not whatever they do, baptism, whatever, you can't go up and get the
Wafer,
yeah.
cracker.
So me and like
The
4
wa-
other
the
kids
wafer
are
and
in the
the-
pews, and everyone else is lined up, and we're like, what's wrong with us? And
Right.
as alcoholics, a lot of alcoholics, at least myself, I always felt like I didn't belong.
Right.
And until we drank, and then we're like,
Mm-hmm.
woohoo, we're in the garden. I do belong at AA, and that's what's nice. That is like my little safety zone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are we, 2, 3. 3 was figuring out that I'm not in control, and turning over when it's outside my hula hoop, and that's kind of how I do 3, and let that go. And about a year into my sobriety, I started going to Al-Anon as well. And so some of that kind of blurs together,
Right.
because Al-Anon's big about detachment and, only do what's in your hula hoop. And every once in a while, the 2 programs will kind of be opposite of each other. And I do have a sponsor in each program. My Al-Anon sponsor is not in AA, and my AA sponsor is not in Al-Anon. And I did that
Right.
on purpose.
Right.
And I like to get the multiple perspectives and then kind of do it on my own. But that's
Right.
how I do 3. Excuse me. But my 4th step, which is the one that everyone dreads, please don't dread your 4th step. Just write
Right.
down whatever the hell bothers you and go and tell somebody it's the greatest thing you've ever done.
Absolutely.
But I had a hell of a time doing it, and I just couldn't figure out what to put in it. And my first sponsor, I kept saying, I don't get it. And he was like, just write down what eats your lunch. And I'm like, everything eats my lunch. He goes, well, write
Well, there
down
you go.
everything. But he goes, what really makes your stomach turn? Like, what makes you like angry, like tight? And like, anger, I got. I can do this. And so obviously my real father and my stepmother were on there, and I could write out some people. So we did that. And I like to tell this story. So when he came over, and it was my first 5th step, we sat on my back porch here. He came over and saw me, and I have a screened-in back porch, and it's fairly nice lawn in the back. And it was sunny, and I had the fan going. And I just started telling him about what happened. And I talked about the abuse, and I talked about how I was treated. And he stopped me, and he said, oh, honey, you do realize that your part in that was that you were there, and that it's not your fault. And I'd heard that before, but I never really heard that before.
Right.
And that was another God shot. And that was when I started to heal from my trauma. That's when I really accepted that what had happened to me was not my fault. Because up until that point, I was a victim. And even in sobriety, I was still a victim. You should feel sorry for me. Look what happened to me. And I'm so glad that I don't live like that anymore. But I had to do the work to get to the point where I'm not a victim anymore.
Right.
Yep.
And so we went through that whole 5th step. And when he left, I got an hour to sit by myself. And there's a friend in the program that I had contacted before to come over and hang out with me because I was home by myself. My partner was working. And then we spent the afternoon together, which I greatly, and I always advise my sponsees to do the same, which was a big help. But it just felt like this huge weight had been lifted off. And off my shoulders and it was great. I have since done 2 more 4th steps and 5th steps because I've done the steps 2 more times. But that's the one that was really good. And then we get to 6 and 7, which the first time I did were just little prayers because we didn't do a deep dive into those. But what happened with 6 and 7 over my sobriety was that a friend of mine in the program said that he was cleaning up his sobriety books and asked me if I wanted to borrow some, or he just said he was getting rid of some and he wanted to give them to somebody. So I was like, I'll take them. And so I'm going to back up here for a sec. Back in the beginning of my sobriety, my first sponsor, one of the things he had me do right from the beginning, probably in the first month, he said, get up 15 minutes earlier every day and get ready for, get up, use the bathroom, get some coffee, whatever, sit somewhere for 5 to 15 minutes and think about your sobriety. Think about how are you going to stay sober for the next 24 hours. And I'm very, very grateful that he told me to do that.
Right.
Because that has developed into my morning routine. And I know you guys have talked about your morning routines on here.
Right.
Yep.
Which, if I do the whole thing, takes an hour, but I can edit it out. So I have 6 daily readers, and then there's a book about being present that it's a daily reader that I like. There's usually 10 to 20 minute meditation, and then I text probably about 10 to 25 people in the program just to say good morning and say hey and how I'm doing.
Right.
And I always text my sponsor. So all that being said, was the book that came by was Drop the Rock, which I don't know if you've read or not. It's an excellent book. Highly recommend it. And I added that into my morning reading. And for those of you that have read the book before, it's short little stories about 6 and 7. And as I was reading through it, it let me know that because my character defects essentially were things that I hated about myself. They were things that I learned how to do that no longer serve me during that abuse. Things like paying, way too close attention to all the details. Where are all the exits? How are people acting? Are they being okay? Can I make them happy? Can I make them comfortable? How can I, melt into the woodwork and be invisible? Part of the things growing up is, children are to be seen and not heard. If someone talks to you, you speak the least amount of words possible to answer their questions. And those were the things that I did. And so in doing this work in 6 and 7, I did a pretty deep dive with my current sponsor with those. What I did is I went through all of those things and I looked at the pieces that were good things to learn, and tried to let go. And I try and let go of the things in there that no longer serve me.
Right.
So
Right.
is it good to be observant? Hell yeah, it is. And I learned that by going through that experience. And so it was helping me accept who I was and that I went through that. And because I went through the experience I went through, instead of feeling sorry for myself, I now look at it as that's what made me the person I am today. Without those experiences, I would not be Gary. And that really turned the corner for me. And that's when I no longer was a victim and I was a survivor.
Right.
And doing that work, which I did in therapy and in AA, but doing that step work really, really helped me with that. And it was pivotal in my healing along with my sobriety. And my sobriety has given me the room and the breadth and the support to heal. And you can heal. It will make you a stronger person.
Right.
Does it suck what happened? Yeah, it does. I'm still a little
Right.
angry. I am. Believe it or not, my stepmother passed away about a month and a half ago. I haven't spoken to her or my real father since I was 18. The last thing
Wow.
my father ever said to me was, "Don't die by the time you're 30," because I had come out to him and he disowned me.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so that's what I have for Gary Senior, and it sucks because I'm Gary Junior. But again, acceptance is the key. Acceptance is the answer. 417. My sponsees hate it when I say that. I use it too. It works.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you tell them.
Totally. 8 is a list, and 8 and 9 kind of go together. But 8 was my list, and I like to tell the one about my aunt because we have amended our relationship. But I had gone to visit her, And she was on my list to do amends to, obviously, because I disrupted her and her family and acted
Sure.
like a fool. And she would not let me do an amends. We sat down and I said, I need to talk to you. And she's like, no, you don't. I was like, no, I need to talk to you. And she's like, nope, we're good. She's like, as long as you keep doing what you're doing, we're good. I was like, you don't understand. I have to do this. And she's like, no, you don't. And I was like, okay. And I believe it or not, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, I really want to tell you all the, I do really feel bad, and I am being a different person, because it's not,
Right.
I'm sorry. It's, I'm amending my behavior, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do that again. And actually, I was just up visiting her. So she now is 50% owner of a cottage that I used to go to. My grandparents owned a cottage on the St. Lawrence River, and you guys will know where that is. No one down here knows where the Thousand Islands are. They're like, where? It's like saying Niagara
Right.
Falls.
Right.
Nothing against the Southerners, and I like living in the South, but I'm like, do you really not know where that is? Anyway, so there's a cottage there, and I used to spend summers there, and that was always a safe place for me. And Amy and her brother Danny actually own it, and she goes up in August. And so I went up just myself and spent a long weekend with her and her husband and her two kids, who are now grown, and had a wonderful weekend. And we got to talk about a lot of this stuff. More so, she did let me actually talk about some of it. I didn't have to make amends. They're living amends.
Right.
Right.
And Mike, I really appreciate what you said last week in your podcast that made me think, because for me, 8 and 9 always was, you do the list and you make the amends, and then that's it. So you do them
Right.
again. But you had mentioned that the living amends go on and on and on. And I was like,
Right. Yep.
Right.
and I
Yeah,
used that
like I
to
said.
share in a meeting. I was like, I heard this on a podcast. It's so mind blowing. Like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, our friend Don, who actually I'm going to see on Sunday, yeah, he 40 some years sober, and he's like, I'm still working on it. Yeah.
it's a great story too.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
You all have one of those at a meeting, right?
Uh-huh.
You
Well,
drag
I
in a
mean-
newcomer or someone who's being a smartass and be like, here, ask the question to him.
Yep.
And the other thing too, like you were talking about your aunt, where she wouldn't, I guess, quote unquote, let you do the amends. I mean, that's I had that with my ex-wife, definitely
Right.
with my son. I was actually trying to draw shit out of my son. The kid was 9 years old, and I'm like, basically, tell me how I wronged you. I want to apologize, And I didn't say it in those words, but it was one of those things where I'm like, I know I treated you like shit. I know I wasn't a good father to you. Please tell me what you feel. Tell me what you know so I can fucking fix it. And he was like, meh. But I mean, we've built this relationship over the years, and he knows who I am now. And I've been sober for more than half his life. So that's my amends to him. My daughter, too. My daughter and I have had a conversation and conversations, but we never really sat down and had this formal, here's what I did and here's what the deal is. And even as I've tried to open up on certain things, she lets me tell stories, and she soaks all that stuff in. But when I try to say, do you remember this part? She's like, it's all good, man, just keep doing what you're doing. The same thing that your aunt said to you, which is it's tough at the time, because we get this mindset and we've this feeling like I want to fix. I want this piece to be okay right now. But sometimes, it is. It's a forever,
Definitely.
Right. It's changing your behavior and continuing to behave in this changed way. Don't go back to the bullshit that you were before. And it, 9 times out of 10, that's enough.
Right.
You're just not that asshole that you were. You're a different asshole. But
a higher
Well, I can
creative
still
asshole.
be an asshole.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. We can. Yeah, you've listened to us, right? You've listened.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We've been around a couple of minutes, and we still have our moments. There's no doubt. So, yeah, sorry to interrupt on that. So, yeah, you're 8 and 9, and yes, and we've had that feeling from the start. Nine is never ending, and that's not a bad thing.
And you know what? Before we get to those quote unquote maintenance steps, 10, 11, and 12,
Yeah.
why don't we take a quick break
Why don't we
and
do
have
that?
a word from our sponsor?
Hey everyone, it's your friends at Sober, Not Mature.
Hi there.
Yes, it's both of your friends this time. Hi Mike, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Bill?
I am doing well, but we do have a purpose. We actually usually talk about our one website, but we actually have two websites now. So two websites in one. All right, so everyone knows we still have the podcast website that is www.SoberNotMature.com. And we just launched the store website, so we also have that. Do you know what the website address is on that one, Mike?
Of course I don't.
It's pretty easy, Mike. It's www.SoberNotMatureShop.com. But from the podcast website, you can still hit the store link and get into the web store, or you can access it from our Instagram page through the highlights. We've been posting quite a bit about it, and we'll continue to do that. But do you know what's on the second website, Mike?
Well, there's a store. There are products that you can purchase for you and your loved ones.
Well, Mike, do we still have merchandise?
We have merchandise. Well, we got T-shirts and coffee mugs and all kinds of crap.
And one of the coolest parts, we also do have all the recovery books from Hazelden, which is kind of a big deal.
That is a big deal.
Yeah, at least for us. So all the books that we read, God Grant Me, 24 Hours, the Big Book, the 12 and 12, all of those books are available for sale on our website. And once again, that store website is www.sober.
Trying to help, man.
I know you are. You're not helping, though. Okay, now I got to say www.SoberNotMatureShop.com. .com. Visit that today, or visit the podcast website, which is, again, the podcast website. So
www.SoberNotMature.com.
Did you just say sober but not mature?
Yeah, sure. Write that down.
Yeah, like fucking mush mouth or something. All right, everyone. You've suffered enough with this, and we'll get back to what we were talking about previously. So visit the websites, though. All right, everyone, welcome back. And that was quick, man. You just jumped right in there and popped on that break, and I was like,
wanted to get the fuck over with.
You're a professional. you're a professional.
Right, I'm a professional something.
Right, exactly. So yeah, well, that was a good place though. Okay, so back to Gary and the maintenance steps.
Yeah. So we left off with 9 to 10. Actually, I struggled with a lot. I don't have very good stories about 10 other than it's just something that I try and do. And the way that I learned it was to I do it immediately. I try and do it as soon as I possibly can. As soon as I feel like I'm not in the right, if it feels uncomfortable or if I've done something that's bothered somebody or whatever, then I go try and make it right then.
Yeah. Right.
But I don't make a list at night. I should, but I don't.
Nobody does. Anybody that does is either lying or insane.
I have some friends in recovery that do.
I know. Right. And I said either they're lying or they're insane. You don't sit there with a pen and paper every fucking night. Nobody does.
Yeah, not every fucking night.
Don't
but
feel bad.
They do it a couple times a week. But
well,
I do try and think about it before I go to bed.
Yeah, and that's the only thing. The only thing that I do with my step 10 is I do a quick opening to my prayers, and then I literally say, I'm like, okay, my day, and then I think back. And for the longest time, I only looked for the negative. Did I do anything wrong? Did I fuck with anyone? Did I hurt anyone? But Mike is the one that kind of brought that to my attention. Take a look at the good too. So I'll try to pick out, either I'm fucked up in my head about this. I deal with that. This time I didn't hurt anyone, but these are the things that happened well. So it's an inventory step. That's all it is. It's an overview. You don't have to necessarily, to make a list of it. Hey, if people do it and that's their thing, that's cool. There's a lot of things that I do that are very structured and regimented in the morning. But I like doing that. It's a pausing moment for me. And it's a recap. Make sure I didn't fuck with anyone and try to recognize what I did well that day.
Yeah. A little daily inventory. That's all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. And in the book study that I attend, we just finished 10 and the 12 and 12. And it did remind us in there that it's not just the bad, it's the good as well.
Yep.
So give
Yeah, well,
yourself
that's
some
where I got it
credit.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
like
Trust
to
me,
tell
it
myself a
didn't come
lot.
out of this sick head.
And I seriously,
No, we learned it.
I don't think that I picked up on that until we might have actually been doing this podcast before I really picked up on that. And we've only been doing this for a year and a half. We've been sober a little bit, and so
Yep.
for all that time I was only looking at the negative. I don't think that hurt me, but it's like people say, gotta give yourself some grace, take a look at the good that you do, sort of thing. So it's a just a shift. It was cool.
Right. And as an alcoholic, I like to feel good. And, when I look back at the good things I did, it makes me feel good. So, hey,
Right.
there it is.
Yeah, it works.
Definitely. And then 11 is one of my favorite steps, actually. The prayer part of it, not so much, but the meditation part,
Yeah.
yes. But I still do prayers. Like the prayer of St. Francis is one of my favorites. And it's funny when I take a sponsee through the steps, and every step I'm like, this is the prayer that I want you to say every morning. And
Right.
they kind of give you this look. I'm like, and I'm going to do it right along with you while you're doing it. So that way I can say, you've done it too. I would not do anything. I would never ask you to do anything I would not do.
Right.
Right.
Or that I have not done. And it's really nice to do that with them. And be along there with them. So, and it's a good reminder for me too. Like, oh, this is step 3 prayer, and this is step 4 prayer.
Right.
But I like that one. But meditation, I probably got into about a year in, because I kept hearing it. So, so far in my journey, if I go to a meeting or if I'm around people in recovery and I keep hearing the same thing over and over and over, that usually means I need to focus on it.
Right.
And I'm open for that now, right? It's it's honest, open-minded, and willingness.
Right.
How much do you want to do this program? And those things will be there if you look for them. And they can be God shots. So that was one of the things. I'm like, all right, we'll try this meditation thing. And I use an app, and I don't want to be an advertisement, but I started with an app,
Right.
and I would fall asleep. I would do it at night at like 7:00, like after dinner, and I'd sit down and be like, oh, I'm going to clear my mind, blah, blah, blah. And I'd fall asleep. So it was kind of frustrating at first. And for anyone out there struggling with meditation, it does not mean to clear your mind. It just means that you can allow thoughts to flow through it.
Right.
And I like the analogy that think of a busy highway, but you're sitting up on the mountainside looking at the highway. The cars are your thoughts. That doesn't mean you run down the highway and jump in the car and try and drive it. You just let them flow on the highway.
Right. Or jump in front of it and try to stop it.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
hey, Gary, if you want to mention the app that you use, we don't care. I mean, we talk about stuff
Okay.
like that. If it's something that works for you that might work for other people, mention the app.
Well, I started with Headspace.
Right.
And what I like about Headspace is the ones that are free, they give you about 10 or 15 beginner ones. And it was enough to do it. Like a lot of them only give you 1 or 2, but Headspace actually gave me enough that increased the time that I could spend a couple weeks on, that I actually understood how to meditate by the time I was done with the free ones. And then I bought it for a year. And I went through pretty much all of them, and I started doing it in the morning. And
So you wouldn't fall asleep?
I don't fall asleep anymore. I do sometimes at the meeting. So there's a meditation meeting. there's a meditation meeting I
stay
attend.
awake at regular meetings sometimes. So go ahead.
Yeah, I have a story about that too. But there's a meditation meeting I go to on Wednesday nights, and it's a 20-minute meditation. And they use it's basically a candlelight meeting, but you meditate for 20 minutes, and it's open discussion and a candlelight. And I've been guilty of falling asleep in that one because I'm comfortable and it's at night.
Sure.
And the funny story about falling asleep in a meeting in early recovery, I went to a meeting over off the plaza, and this big guy was in this meeting, and he literally was snoring out loud. They didn't even get done with the readings, and he started snoring, and I was like, how can he fall asleep in a meeting? That's horrible. Blah blah blah. You should be paying attention, all that. And then probably 2 months ago, when I go to a meeting now, that's where I go relax. Like
Right.
I let the outside world go away. I'm with my people and I'm comfortable.
Mhm.
And I just don't know how else to describe that. And I was tired one night and I just felt comfortable and I started nodding off. And I thought about that guy at that meeting and I was so upset with him. And I was like, oh, this is why people fall asleep at the meeting. Because it's my time to work on me.
Right.
You know, and it's a comfortable space for me. It wasn't for a long time, but it gets there. And it
Yes,
just
it does.
let the world go. Leave the rest of the world outside. Go see
Right.
my peeps. Definitely good. But meditation has been very good for me. It's transformed me and it's helped calm me down. Believe it or not, this is calm, Gary. You saw me when I was a kid. I was just bouncing off the walls. And it's also helped with reacting to things. So it helps with that pause. And I use a lot of the techniques outside of doing the meditation. And I actually use a different app now. Nothing against Headspace, but I just didn't renew it. And during COVID, Balance put out where you can get Balance for a year. And I really like the guy's voice in it. Ofusu, I think is his name or something, but it's very deep, rich voice. And so I bought that for a lifetime and I just
Oh,
use
wow.
that. And there's a timer on there and there's some sleep stuff on there. And so I just use that.
Cool.
And that's
And
what I
hey,
use.
if anyone signs up for Headspace or Balance and they ask where you heard it from, tell them you heard it from us.
That's right.
Right.
Heard on Sober Not Mature.
Yeah, where did you hear this? How did you hear about us on Sober Not Mature? That's kind of funny.
Right.
We've been talking about getting advertisers, and that's why when you said that, I'm like, yeah, hell, go ahead, because the thing of it is, and we're trying to do it is an opportunity, like something like that when. If somebody's using something or somebody's reading a book, or practicing something or whatever the deal is, why not share it? And that's been our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And also if it's something that even though the two of us we don't sit down and meditate. I probably would never use a meditation app because I get that fix, quote unquote, in another way. But I know a ton of people that do it, and that's what they really need to ground themselves. So I
Right.
mean, the hell with it. Why not, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I float once a month. I'd like to do it more, but I can't afford it. But yeah, I go into an isolation tank and float for an hour or so every month, and yeah, same thing, man. It's wonderful and it helps.
Yeah.
I would like to do that. Is it claustrophobic at all?
I'm not, so no. But
Okay.
I mean, I've done it for a long time. My girlfriend actually owned a float spa when I first met her.
Nice.
She sold the business eventually, but yeah, so I do it a lot when she had it. But we go once a month now, and it's like anything else. You have to work at it a little bit and get used to it and whatever. Now I just get in the tank and I'm in twilight and literally floating mentally in about 10 to 15 minutes because I know what I'm doing now. But yeah, it takes a little practice and a little time, but it's wonderful. You get in there and you center yourself and you don't hear anything, you don't see anything, you don't touch anything, you're just floating. And yes, and those cars go flying by and it's wonderful.
That's great. You don't listen to
Yeah.
Alice Cooper while you're in there?
No, absolutely. No, there's no sound.
Yeah, which is cool, and I've never done it before. I was going to do it a couple of times when she still owned it, and then it was just
Right.
timing wise when I was back there at that time. But
Mhm.
yeah, and it was. I don't know that I would be the claustrophobic part of it. I'm not super claustrophobic, but I'm sure it just be a matter of getting used to knowing that
Yeah.
I know I can get out. I'm not going to get
Oh, yeah.
stuck in there. That's
Right.
that would be the main thing. I don't want to be. I don't ever want to be fucking buried alive or anything like that. Being like,
No.
No.
No, the lid opens, and quite frankly, you can leave the lid open and turn the lights off in the room, but it's better with it closed,
right.
I think.
Well, yeah, full experience. Might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there's a
anyway.
couple places here in Charlotte you can do it. I've just never done
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, give it a shot. I highly recommend, and yes, mentally, but also physically too. Floating in those Epsom salts for that amount of time, it's wonderful.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Epsom salt.
Cool.
Yep, that's what it is. There's like 1,000 pounds of Epsom salts in the tank, and so that's why you float. It's
Wow.
like the Dead Sea.
Oh shit, I
Yes.
forgot about that.
Yep.
Nice. Cool.
Excellent.
But so
Um,
so you were on 11. Are you
It's on
done with 11?
11.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
obviously the last step, which they're all important, but 12 is very
Mhm.
important.
Right.
And so the practicing the principles in all of my affairs is something that
Mhm.
recently I've really tried to do the last couple of years. And the place where I
Right.
try to do that the most is work. And
Right.
that's difficult
Uh-huh.
because I can do it. I can do it with other people in recovery. It's a piece of
Oh
cake.
yeah, it's
you know?
yeah, right. Right. It's easy to do it in between the the Serenity Prayer and the Our Father. It's doing it between the Our Father and the Serenity Prayer that's tough.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very good. But also we learn a language. AA taught me a language of recovery.
Mhm.
And so if you talk to other people in recovery, they get it. And sometimes
Right.
if you use those terms at work, because they're just familiar, people look
Mhm.
at you like you're an alien, like, what? I was like, oh yeah, I forgot you're not in recovery. And there aren't a lot of people at work anymore that know that I'm in recovery. We had a woman that worked there that was in recovery. And I knew her before I got sober.
Mhm.
And oddly enough, at work, people don't really realize that I'm sober, and it's
Right.
none of their business. Quite frankly, I don't care.
Right.
But she and I kind of figured that out. I went to lunch, and I was like, she jumped the gun too. She's like, "Did you bring me to lunch because you're going to tell me you're sober?" And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Oh my god, I'm in recovery," and so then it was super cool because I had someone to talk to.
Right.
So
Mhm.
if something was bugging me during the day, I'd be like, "Can we go in the conference room?" And then we'd talk about program, and then I'd feel better.
Sure.
But she had a lot more time than I did, and she would just look at me and be like, "You're not that important, Gary. You're just not that important." And I was
It's
like,
always
"What?"
nice to be reminded of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But back then, I didn't know what that meant
Right.
because I was still learning. There's all that stuff in the program that takes forever to get in your thick head sometimes, and I still
Mhm.
stuff that you know, I just like,
Yeah, me
"What?"
too.
Like what you said last week. Just like that was a mind blowing in the car. I was like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Right.
Things
Well,
will be
and like I
revealed when
said,
they're ready.
there's some of these things that I've had, and Mike and I have been around each other. I mean, literally almost since day one, gone through the same
Mhm.
process with the same people in the same place. Even though we've moved, we still followed literally the same path. And just in the last year and a half, we'll be talking about something. And I've had at least five revelations. I can think
Mhm.
of three off the top of my head, but I'm talking, I'm like, oh fuck, or he'll say something, I'm like, I didn't know that, you know, and again, we've been doing this for a year and a half, and we're like almost 13 and a half years sober. So for 12 years, not that I was doing anything wrong, but these little light bulb things that should have popped years ago didn't. And then I'm like, oh wow, that makes that a little bit easier, you know.
Definitely.
But I mean that's one of the things that in I know you've listened enough to probably know this already, but um, we're of the opinion that we don't get this, we don't have this, we're not there yet, anything like that, So it not only it actually excites me to learn something new, because when I'm always looking for something new to learn, because I'm always striving to get better or change or evolve or whatever it is. So it's
Hmm.
kind of cool knowing that we're not done yet, and knowing we've got more
Mhm.
to learn. And then when a new morsel, even if it's a little one, comes up, I'm like, fuck, that's really cool, man. So it's I don't know, it's great. I love the fact that who knows what we'll learn next week, or next year.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was drilled into our heads from the beginning. Remain
Right.
teachable.
Yeah. Well, and once again, I didn't always have, what do you mean? I didn't always listen to all those things. I think I missed that meeting, Mike.
All right. Well, you heard it now, so you
Right.
have no excuse.
I know. I know. I know. But yeah, I mean, you had mentioned the whole work thing, and that's God. We've talked about that for years. It's like every once in a while, it'd be just nice to be able to have a big book and just fucking throw it at somebody and say, can you at least read? You don't have to read the first 164. Just read chapter 5, the first like 3 pages. Take a look at 3, and look at these couple of pages over here, and then act right. Just those couple of things. That's all you got to do. Because it's hard when you get out there and you realize that. I mean, there's so many people with it. It could be little things, and usually it is the little things that are probably the most irritating to all of us. It's just
Yes.
little things that people don't do, or little things that people do, and we know better. And it's just like,
So
why?
basically, you're saying there's a whole bunch of people out there with their heads up their asses.
Yes. Yep. I am.
Right, and unfortunately, we can't pull them out for them.
I know,
Nope,
yeah, people, places, and
can't.
things, but yeah, even
Yep.
with we had Mike's girlfriend Chris on here, we had our sister Kathy on here, and all the different normies that we've talked to, over the years. That there's so many people that are non-alcoholic and don't have an issue with this thing, but when they hear the steps, they're like, God, some of this shit just makes sense, and it does. They're life, it's life lessons. It's not really, it's not really designed just for us people, everyone can benefit.
Right. Program for living.
Right.
It's being a
It
better
just happens
person.
it just helps us to not have to pick up to deal with the shit.
Right.
But lots of people out there that are just not dealing with it, and I don't know what the hell they're doing. I want to give them a bag of heroin and say, go.
Yeah. If you want to get your shit straight, wreck your life, and then I'll show you where to go, and then I can help you.
Yep.
I always say everyone can use 2 through 12.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
Yep.
everyone's
Exactly.
powerless over something, so you can substitute it with whatever you want. But other than
Mhm.
1, everyone can use 2 through 12.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. So with and I don't want to interrupt or obviously interrupt any further with you wrapping that up, but because I've got a couple of questions. I just made a couple of notes, but I want you to continue what you're talking about. But I mean, so 12, obviously the work situation.
Mhm.
Again, I didn't
That's
want to
actually
interrupt
helped
your.
quite a bit. It took a while to get comfortable with it, and
Mhm.
surprisingly, gratitude towards people that help you has come
Mhm.
back like double fold at work. And just pausing, and also realizing that I don't have to answer an email immediately. I can let it sit. And that's been really nice too. No response is a response. That's an Al-Anon thing, but
Right.
it works.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, if I just sit, it's not always up to me. Like, I have to fix everything. I was like, "Ugh," I still
Right.
fight with that. It's like, if it comes in my inbox and it's not, the world isn't falling down, I just let it sit. And inevitably, what'll happen in a couple of hours, someone else will take care of it.
Right. Oh,
Or
yeah.
the
Well,
customer will be like, I need this now. And it's great. And then it's taken care of, and I don't have to stress over it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, when I used to do group, I used to tell the guys, look, man, I know you're sitting here. I know you're, there's so much shit you got to fix because, you fucked all this stuff up. But 90% of it is going to take care of itself. And that other 10%, you will take care of it when you're ready to and capable of taking care of it. So just calm the fuck down, man.
Right.
Yep.
Definitely.
Well,
Yeah.
and literally being
and
able
I needed to learn that 90% that I've got to fix is going to take care of itself. I don't need to fix it.
Right. I was going to say the exact same thing at different words, but it helps that we have been there, and even though they don't see it now, that we went through the same goddamn thing.
Right.
all ready
And I
to
still do. It's a
change the
practice,
world.
Right? It's
absolutely.
a practice on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Yep. Every goddamn day.
Yes, every day.
For the rest of our lives, sir.
Life on life's terms.
Right. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Life happens. The other part about step 12, and then we can get to your questions there, Bill, is having had a spiritual awakening. And thankfully for me, that happened fairly early. So at home group, I was leaving one day. I think I was 3 months sober at that point. Because I actually started going to AA in October, but my sobriety date is November. So I had to do a little bit more research.
Sure.
But so I was going home, and back then people just used to appear between two cars. I don't know, and scare the crap out of you because I was still in the fog and like, I don't get this thing. And another friend of mine in the program, who I still maintain touch with, popped up between these two cars and said, "You need to go to Winter Awakening." And I was like, "What the hell is that?" And what that is every year is a sober retreat. Um, it happens to be geared towards LGBT, but it's a sober retreat. And so I hemmed and hawed about it quite a bit. And um, I asked Uncle Eric. So my first sponsor had a fairly large sponsor family, and so one of the guys that Brett sponsored those, he became Uncle Eric. But he's like, well, it's not like we sacrifice chickens. It's a bunch of sober people get together and have a good time. And I was like, okay, I'll go. So I registered and paid the money, and I went with a friend of mine who absolutely did not like it at all. And we showed up, and I walk in this lodge, and there's 70 people in there, and it's loud. And I just was like, what the hell did I do? And so I went and sat in my cabin, and I went through they have workshops on Saturday and Sunday, and I went through and circled them. And I said, I made a decision, like, I spent all this money and I came all this way. I could sit in my cabin all weekend, or I could dig in and try and do this stuff. And so I just went to all the workshops, and literally by noon the next day, I had let all of my boundaries go. I let all my armor down. I let, I was with people that understood me and accepted me and loved me for who I was. And, even though I was an alcoholic, I was finally with my people. Like I finally belonged somewhere. And
Right.
that was my first spiritual awakening. And that happened to happen up in the mountains. It's in the Highlands in North Carolina, and it's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a neat place. And then I opened my big mouth on Sunday and said, have you guys ever thought about doing XYZ? And they were like, here, you can be on the committee. And I've been on the committee ever since.
Uh-huh.
And it's been really good. I mean, it's service work on a totally different level.
Right.
And there's another retreat that's coming up, Cara Lambda, and that's coming up in October. And I went last year and really enjoyed it because I wasn't on the committee and I could go and enjoy the retreat. And then Winter Awakening is in January. And so if you haven't been to a sober retreat, I highly, highly, highly recommend it.
It's funny.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
We're actually going to our first one in November.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
A friend of ours is she got roped in, and she's part of it and kind of running. They have 2 a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And she got roped in, and she's sort of organizing and doing the fall one this year, and asked us to come and speak. And we're going to actually we're going to try to do our first live podcast from there.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, like I said, we're 13 and a half years sober. We're going to our first retreat. So don't feel bad that you were hemming and hawing it 3 months.
we got to actually work while we were there too. But no, it was funny. It was over the, when was that? Was that in May, or is that over the summer that whatever it was a few months ago when I was back in Cleveland, and we were to get together with friends. And
I think it was Founders Day.
Oh shit. Was it? Cause we were over at, Megan and Michael's. It was the barbecue that we did.
Man. All right, I don't know.
I don't even know.
Summertime.
Yeah, Michael made like 100 chicken wings that night, so we played
right.
cards. Yeah, but
yeah.
But so she brought it up, and I remember, she's like, "Oh, you guys are coming, talking about steps." We're like, I mean, at this point, it seemed like a year away. The last I remembered hearing about it was just let us know, give us some more information. So she texted me the other night, "Hey, remember this? This is that. You can go. Blah 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 blah." And I'm just like, this like 6 texts in a row, and I'm just like, "Fuck me." And yeah, later that night, we're like, "Okay, yeah, we're going." And she's like, "Oh, you can do your podcast there." And what we may end up doing is doing like a normal episode and do like a bonus episode while we're there, just in case anything goes weird. But also then we could just have some fun with it, and have some just people. And like Mike said, literally have a live audience. But and then so it's our friend Mara. She's like, oh, by the way, and you have to do step 8. I'm like, you can give me whatever step you want. I'm like, I'm familiar with them. I'm like, I don't give a shit what you give me. I'm like, you can give me any one of them. Pick. There's 12. I'll take whichever one you give me. I'm not even going to
Right.
study. I'll just have it. I know what to talk about. It's that sort of thing. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
It's a cool way to do a deep dive with people that are really interested in
Mhm.
doing that.
Right.
Right.
And a lot of these people I only see during that retreat. The same people come back year after year after year, and I only see them once a year. And some of them I maintain friendships with. It's very nice. But the funny part was the first year that I went, I hardly talked to anybody because I was afraid of everyone. And the second year, this guy comes up to me and he goes, "Gary, you're talking to people this year." And I was like, "Of course I am." He goes, "No, no, no. Last year you didn't talk to anybody." He's like, "You're actually talking and you're comfortable in your own skin." And, and I always view it as it shows me what I've done, where I'm at, and what I need to do.
Right.
Right.
And
Well, yeah, I
those
mean,
people will tell you, trust me.
exactly. Right. Well, I mean, the big book talks about, other people are going to see the changes in us long before we do.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. 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 People
Definitely.
are going, hey, you're acting differently. Am I? I'm still all fucked up in my head. What are you talking about?
And it's neat to watch people grow. I've gotten to watch others grow like that.
Absolutely.
Too.
Right.
And like I said, it is service on a totally different level. And as long as the light bulb comes on for one person that weekend, because we do a Sunday morning, we do a gratitude meeting. People say what they're grateful for the weekend.
Right.
And if someone can have the same experience that I had in my first one, my work is worth every bit of work to do it. But it's not
Nice.
work anymore. I mean, I do the registration and the technology part of it, but it's kind of neat. And I usually do a workshop. I'm doing a workshop at Cara Lambda. I volunteered to do one. I'm going to do a workshop on fear.
Well,
Nice.
and I don't know that, and I have nothing against retreats, but I don't know that I would have just signed up for one unless I was asked to be there. It's the same thing with anything. I'll help anyone. But I don't necessarily step up to do it.
It's the same with anything. I'm not doing shit unless you ask me to.
Right. I mean, and that's one of my. And you and I talked about it on here. I mean, we're certainly not the first people to jump up and volunteer for anything or everything. But I'm not going to say no. If it's something, if it's something that's can help somebody and it's not going to hurt me, whether it helps me or not is irrelevant. But the only thing that would have prevented me from going is if there would have been some sort of a scheduling type of conflict. Other than that, that's exactly what I told Mara. And then I checked with you, and you were cool with it. And I'm like, I mean, I don't get anything going on that weekend, So I'd love to be involved,
Just be careful; they can be addicting.
Right? Yeah. I hate that shit.
You feel really, really good when you come back. Trust me.
When this whole recovery stuff starts getting addicting, and I want to do more, I hate that. Hate
it. I just know some people that go to a lot of retreats. I'm like, I think you're going to too many.
Right?
No such thing. I'm like, yes, there is.
And here's the thing too, and we've talked about this before. So I was, and both of us have done service work at meetings, and Mike currently does. He's got a service position at his home group, and has for years. Right? I mean, God, I don't know how long. I mean, you have for years. One
way or another, pretty much fucking 12 years.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and when I was in Cleveland, I was a secretary of a meeting for a year, and then they rotate people out on purpose, and I was super fucking bummed when I had to give that up. And when I came back to Wisconsin, I was asked by a guy that had been doing this secretary position at the Saturday night meeting, and he's like, "Would you be interested?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool." I said, "When do you want me to start?" And he's like, "Next weekend." And I'm like, "Okay." I did it for 4 years or something like that.
Right.
And the only reason I stopped it was a pandemic that kicked me out of it. And then after that, as the meetings started opening back up, I just didn't go back to that club again. But I loved it. It was great. It got me to that meeting every week. But it was also, I loved being a part of that way. I really do. So it's, even though I'm not going to volunteer, if I'm asked and I do it, I know I'm going to have fun all the time, every single time.
Right.
Yep. I totally agree.
Yeah. So they're a lot of fun.
They are.
Yeah, so get busy and help somebody, motherfuckers.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's what this turned out to be. And when Mike and I just did this for ourselves to
Right?
begin with, and then we're like, yeah, if somebody listens, cool. But this was us doing this podcast was us filling in a piece or a void or whatever you want to call it. At least for me, I know it was a void, but it was
Right.
another thing. It was a meeting, for Mike and I every week, and it's turned into something a little bit more cool than that. It's still about us. We come to this and we wouldn't do it if we weren't having fun. But the fact that it actually helps people, and we've got to meet all these people. I mean, meet you, and just the number of guests that we have, and hear all these stories. It's wonderful. It's just great.
And I'm very grateful that you did it.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's
I
cool.
think I tripped across you guys probably you're about 3 months in.
Oh, really?
Is when I tripped across your podcast, and I literally just put sober in podcast because there's another one I listened to called That Sober Guy.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And I like it's Shane, and I really like his podcast as well. And he has guests on, but a lot of time it's just him. It's like 20-minute monologues.
Right.
And I was like, let's just see what else is out there. But the thing that really drew me in about yours is it's raw and real, which is what life is,
Right.
and you can tell that you don't edit it, which I love.
Right.
Don't take that the wrong way at all.
Right.
No.
I'm like, wow, this is great, and because a lot of them are really polished and they're nicely produced. I'm glad that the sound is better though. I will tell you that. Because I went back and listened from the beginning because I wanted to hear the stories. And
they're terrible.
I am glad that the sound is better.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very, very grateful that I found it. And I do look forward to listening to it every week.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, thank you.
And I really appreciate the service work that you guys do.
Well,
and it's neat because you guys get to talk once a week and you just talk on the air.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and the funny part too is that when we had, and I know the initial thought was, I think, and I don't even remember, but I'm sure that we had probably thought about just doing these short little episodes. And I think Mike's episode, which was 3, by the time, so you told your story and then we talked and it was an hour. And then the first time we went over an hour, I think was with Christine. Well, we probably went a little bit over. Christine was the longest one, and we hit like an hour and a half with her. And then that's basically what we've been doing. And then, I'm talking to people, and like Elise from the Sober Curator, she's like, yeah, you guys do and we've had a couple of guests that have said that long form podcast. And I'm like, long form? They're like, yeah, it's just, you guys talk for a fucking long time. I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay. But it is.
She was
it's just
great, by the way.
Well, and the thing of it is we could easily cut things off in an hour. But for instance, we've been running for an hour and 8 minutes right now with you.
8, I see.
And, to cut this off now would just seem wrong, because I know there's more stuff we want to talk about. But I mean, all this stuff, we had no idea what we were doing. And we still don't. It's the fact that we were, and I'm listening to Facebook. Mike has our memories now on there, on our Facebook page. And I popped into a couple of the old clips and the old episodes. I'm like, oh, fuck, this hurts, man. They're terrible, and I'm like, oh my God, it's a bad cell phone call. I mean, we recorded for an hour basically on a bad cell phone. It's just really what it sounded like, but it is what it is. So.
Yeah, well, we could be like Taylor Swift and go back and re-record them. Get the transcripts, and we'll just sit there and read them.
we should do that with one episode just to fuck around, because we could do that. I can grab. Well, the older episodes, it would take me a minute. I could figure it out. We could grab a transcript out of the old ones. But so
that was a joke. I'm not doing that.
I was going to say that would ruin the growth. It shows the growth from the beginning.
I was going to say no. It wouldn't be a re-record. We'd just fuck around it would last literally for about 12 minutes, and we'd both be like, "This fucking that sucks. Let's leave this aside."
Sucks.
But
I did greatly underestimate the total number of fucks, by the way. On your episode where you said that it was the most, I thought like 120. I think you said it was almost 200.
Our biggest was we hit 160. 160 was our biggest.
That's it. 160. I guessed 120.
Yeah,
so
last
I was
week,
like,
Mike
holy
was,
shit, he did 160.
Yeah, last week was 121, Mike, because I forgot to look until like midweek. It was 121. But so here's a couple of things, and the notes I wrote down. But the first thing I wanted to say, and this I've said this to one other person, and I'm going to say it to you. This is not going to sound like a compliment, but it is. I
Okay.
usually 100% despise when people tell their story in the steps, but yours
Mm.
was wonderful. And the last person I said that to was Gio, and he was on
Right.
with us literally a year ago because I'm hearing his clips on our. That's what made me think about the Facebook thing. The people who used to tell stories with the steps used to be like, step one is about this and this is what I did, step two is about this, and it's like, oh, but you told yours in, let's go back to long form, this nice interweave story that said this is the step and this is how I did it. It was wonderful. I truly appreciate it. Totally engaging. So again, I knew it wasn't going to sound like a compliment, but it is. But the other
Well,
thing
thank
that
you.
you had said is that you didn't do the step work like the big book, and I was just going to say that the big book is, it's an outline, it's all suggestions, and adding stuff and doing things outside of what that thing is. There's nothing wrong with that. You added some bulk to what the structure is, in my opinion, right, Mike? I mean, it's not like
Yeah, absolutely.
you didn't take the steps and you're like, well, fuck 1, 2, and 3. I worked on 4, 5, and 6. Fuck 7. I touched on 8. 9 is okay. 10 I loved, and then fuck 11 and 12 is cool. You didn't do that. You worked all of them, but you did it in. You just added shit to it. We know people
Hmm.
who have done Al-Anon and AA, and I like the way you talked about
Hmm.
that. We've known people who are total God guys and people who are not. We know people who, different backgrounds, different lifestyles, all those different things. So all those things that you did, I don't think you went outside of the big book. You just added to and made it your own, which to me is cool. So I just wanted to tell you that. I think you're being hard on yourself by saying something like that. That's all.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
you
And
work your program. That's what
augment probably
trust
is
me.
a better term.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, I work my program, and I'm sure there are plenty of AAs out there that would, scream at me and tell me I'm doing it wrong. And I'm, fuck you, man. I'm sober and I'm happy, and it's working for me. So yes, I, work, but that's the key word. You work,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and you do it, and so it works for you. So you're a better person, and you make other people around you happier. That's all it fucking
Right.
matters. That's all that matters.
And the other thing that you talked about, and I love the fact of given the background on the trauma, but the way that I've read plenty of stories and I've heard this on other podcasts where there's trauma involved and everything is kind of pinpointed on that, saying that this is what caused everything. Um, it, Unless I heard it differently, you didn't do that, and it's not the way that you worked through this. You recognized it, that it was there and it was a factor, and it sounds like you dealt with them separately. I got to get sober, but I got to recognize this is here, but this part of it allowed me to release some of this. So again, you took these as almost two separate things and worked them simultaneously, but didn't necessarily say this happened, and so that's why I did this. And that's how I took it, and I thought it was wonderful the way you explained it.
And
Yeah, well, I think you said, that your sobriety gave you the room to work out the rest of the
Right.
stuff,
Mhm.
which I thought was great.
Yeah, and but I also drank at that. That was at
Mhm.
the end.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was why
Sure.
I was drinking the way I was. Like
Oh,
I
sure.
did not
Mhm.
want to feel. I wanted to be numb, and
Right.
I knew I had a problem. The last year, I knew I had a problem. I just didn't know what to do.
Right.
I
Mhm.
really didn't, and I still struggle with this. I don't know how else we can make recovery accessible to people that were struggling like I had no clue who to reach out to or what to do.
Right.
And I
Mhm.
just went through that hamster wheel every day of getting up and being remorseful. I'm not going to drink today. And then I would feel bad about myself. And then, the car on the way home, I'd stop at the store and pick up 2 magnums of wine. And that's what I would drink
Right.
every night.
Right.
Yeah.
And that just repeated every day. It was awful.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. That's
So
pretty much
I knew
what
I
it
was going to have to
is.
deal with the demons in order to be
Right.
sober. And yes, I did
Mhm.
them both. And I like that. I really appreciate the feedback. I think augmenting the program is better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's
Because
see that.
yoga is part of it too, and also I try and eat really well, and I
Mhm.
try and do some exercise. So that's kind of that holistic approach that I had listed in there. Is AA is a good chunk of it, but isn't all of it.
Right.
Right.
There's other things that I pull in, and I have a bunch of friends that are normies, and
Mhm.
they know that I'm sober and support
Right.
me, and it's cool.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Same thing with my partner. I mean, we've been together for 27 years, so he's seen the
Hmm.
good, the bad, and the ugly, and
I bet.
it's been great. And he's very, very supportive. And
Nice.
funny, he worked in a bar. When he was a teenager, he worked in his dad's bar. His dad owned a bar in Endicott, New York.
Hmm.
And I can come home from a meeting and say a topic, and he'll nail 2 shares. I bet they said this, and I was like, when in the beginning, it used to freak me out. I'm like, were you there? Like it would be almost exactly what someone said.
Right.
I'm like, how do you know this? He goes, dude, I worked in a bar. He goes, we hung out with alcoholics, that weren't sober. I can just imagine
Right.
what they talked about in the meeting.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Again, yeah, we're not special. We're not unique. We're not different. We're garden variety drunks.
Right.
oh, we are, but we're sober,
Right.
Yep.
Well,
and I want to continue to be so.
the other thing
Mhm.
that actually made me laugh is when you were, and I forget who it was that you were talking to that said that you had to go to an AA meeting, and then you said that they have gay AA.
That's right.
Because the reason I laugh so much, and I want to tell you why I laugh, but I also want to make a point to hopefully help somebody else. But in Cleveland, I mean, seriously, there are meetings for, and I'm telling you, everyone, young people,
Yep.
gay, lesbian, LGBT. There's for African American, there's probably Asian meetings. There's all this different stuff. There's this whole thing. There's men's, women's meetings, all meetings, men's meetings, women's meetings. I knew I could say that, but the whole key there is that you can meet somebody that you're going to have something in common with in any meeting. But I think it's cool because you said that a couple of times. I found my people. I'm with my people. That's part of that comfort thing. So what I wanted to say to kind of anyone out there that might be listening, if you're, and I suppose it depends on where you live, if you can find an in person meeting, but there is a thing called the internet, there is a thing called Zoom meetings. I guarantee you, if you do a search, if somebody's looking for a specific group, and I don't care what group you're looking for, you will find a meeting. Okay, maybe not in
Mhm.
your own backyard, depending on where you live. That's fine, but you can go online and you can find you can find gay AA, you can find young AA, old crusty man AA. You can find old women AA. You can find everything. But
Yep.
it made me laugh because in Cleveland again there's such unbelievable variety. It's a buffet of
Mhm.
AA out there. It's wonderful, wonderful.
Charlotte's the same way. You can find a
Yeah.
meeting from 5 a.m. till midnight or later, especially on a
Right.
weekend,
Right.
and
Mhm.
at any time of the day. And that's both virtual and they're being hosted by people here, but that's both
Mhm.
virtual and in person.
Right.
And the meeting app is your friend.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll say about meetings is I travel a lot for work, and every time my first sponsor told me every time that you travel for work, just find some meetings.
Mhm.
And I always do my research anytime I travel or we travel or whatever. I always find a bunch of meetings. I may not go to them all, but I find them because that's in my back pocket. But I do try and go to
Right.
meetings. And everywhere there's AA, and
Mhm.
they always welcome me, and it's always there, and it's
Mhm.
very welcoming. Um,
Yeah.
the best one I went to was the Brown Jug Club, I think it's called. It used to be a nightclub, but it's their sober clubhouse. It's in Paducah, Kentucky. I was doing a phone install there, and like 80 people show up, and there's a local prison there. So half these people are getting recovery that had just got out of prison or are on parole, and it
Nice.
was very scary to walk into. But they were great, and it was AA, and they remembered me
Yeah.
because I had to go back every couple of weeks. I went back for like 2 months, and they remember me. They're like, "You're the guy from Charlotte," and they had great recovery,
Right.
and
Mhm.
it was amazing. And I was like, "This is everywhere." I mean, it's just. And I know some people that are flight attendants that have gone to meetings all around the world
Right.
and
Right.
said the same things. But the hand of AA is there. You just got to go find it. But I'm very grateful
Absolutely.
that Charlotte has a lot of good meetings in it. And I just changed my meeting schedule around. I'm starting to seek people that are more in the solution, like you guys are.
Mm.
And so the one I go to now is a closed step study on Tuesday nights. And it's an interesting mixture of people and some really good recovery, and
Right.
it's
Mhm.
it's been very helpful. I do have a question.
Sure.
Speaking of that meeting, so they go over the steps. They do a step every week, and it just continues, and they do a tradition at the end. So
Right.
I'm sure over the next year or so, because I'm going to go for a while, I'm going to have to talk about the same step over and over and over. How do you
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote reshare your experience, strength, and hope without saying the same fucking story over and over in a different way? Because you guys have been sober for 13 years. I know you share at meetings.
Right.
So
Right.
how do you do
Right.
that? Like, how do you? I hear some people are really eloquent about it, but
Mm-hmm.
I only have X amount of stories to tell and X amount of
Right.
experience.
Well, I mean, for me, I try not to plan anything out, but I mean, when I share, a lot of times it is sort of the same thing, and I've got to remember that, not it's not all about me. There are people in there that have not heard what I have to say yet. So maybe, if somebody has heard what I'm saying already, well, maybe they need the reminder, or maybe they can just shut down and think about something else for a while. But there's that new person there that's never heard it. And maybe you're going to give them that thought bubble. You're going to give them that thing that, you think, oh shit, I've said this, over and over, but you've said it over and over because maybe it needs to be said over and over. So don't worry about it so much.
Right.
Just, share what you have to share. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would
Yeah.
say the same thing is that, and Mike and I are the same opinion that we were kind of taught that our sponsors told us that whatever comes out of your mouth while you're up, behind a podium is what's in your heart that day, and everyone's going to have their, usually kind of like a little bit of a lead in or whatever, and we don't tell a lot of backstories, the drunk along type of thing, but we're going to tell the key points for that same exact reason. I mean, we started repeating stories on here for that same reason because at one point we're like, fuck, man, we talked about this, didn't we? We're like, oh, fuck it, somebody didn't hear it, But then the other thing is that, something probably happened in your life from between March and today, So think of something that happened to you. If you're looking for something fresh to add as a new story, you're living life every single day. You got all these new experiences, but I think more to Mike's point that repetition is how that's what we need as these these people that we are. I think repetition is key.
Mm-hmm. Right. I got to remind myself every day that I'm an alcoholic.
Right. Yeah.
Step 1, 2, and 3, first thing in the morning.
Yep.
That's right.
And I've said this a million times. Twice a day, I've got to tell myself, people, places, and things, you can't control them. And, I've been doing that for 13 fucking years, and I'm just like, every day I'm like, oh, really? I can't control this? But no, I mean, this is all of this. I think all of this has been absolutely wonderful, and those were the main things that I kind of wrote down. But Drop the Rock, that was the last thing. I am familiar with the book, and every time it's brought up, I keep reminding myself or saying I should get that, but now I wrote it down. So that might be one that I kind of piece into what I'm reading, because there's 4 books I read now every morning, and it doesn't take long. You set an hour for your routine. Mine for my prayers and my readings and that sort of thing takes me about 20 minutes. I spend more time trying to get updated on fucking Instagram than I do with my, with my readings and stuff in the morning. But it's a process, but it's not hard, man, and it's helpful.
Yeah, totally. The morning routine thing is real good.
Oh, it's huge,
and it's something that thankfully the people in my life know that I need it, and they know that I'll be a miserable son of a bitch if I don't do it. So they give me plenty of space, and they don't talk to me in the morning. Right. My parents all know, like, that's my time, but I get up way before. When I go visit them in Colorado, I get up way before they do, so they don't. But they know that I have my time, and they know that I go to meetings.
Yeah.
Right.
And do
absolutely.
That stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I live by myself, so it's, I do that every day. But yes, if I'm traveling or I'm with somebody or I'm staying with somebody or whatever, if I have to get up earlier, I have to get up earlier to have my space to get my head right every day. Because miserable son of a bitch. Yes. I'll be fucking. I can't even imagine it at this point. Not taking those 15, 20 minutes in the morning every day to get my day going. I just couldn't do it.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine, I don't care. I'll be late for work. I don't give a fuck. I need to do this every day. First, it's first and foremost. Nothing else comes before that.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yep.
So
put your sobriety first. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah.
So Gary, anything else that you want to just as a wrap up here? Anything else that you want to say to kind of leave with people as a wrap up? Any words of Gary wisdom that you want to leave with people?
Um, hmm. Yeah, I got a whole bunch, but I guess the biggest thing is that everything starts today, and it does work if you work it. Um, I sponsor 4 guys, and they all work different levels of it, and
Hmm.
and that's fine because that's what they do. Um, I'm not in control of others. All I can do is be there to show them that this does work. I do want to say if you're someone like me that's been through the ringer like that, there is you can get on the other side of it. You can survive. And what I'm working on now in both in my program and in therapy is to thrive, because that's the next step. So I just want people to know that you're not alone, and that there is help out there, both in
Hmm.
recovery and outside of recovery, even though it all kind of blends together. And that it does work if you work it. It's not fun. It's not fun work, but it is very rewarding. Um,
Right.
the odd part with the sobriety is over time, I don't mind doing that work.
Right.
I really don't. It's set in front of me, and I don't mind doing it. Um,
Hmm.
I do it at a much slower pace now, because in the beginning it was like a marathon and I had to get the steps done. But I don't view it that way anymore. This is a journey. It's not a. There's no end.
Right.
I think Mike, you said last week that the end, you graduate when you die sober,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I think that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's when this thing ends.
Yep.
and I
When
appreciate
I
the
die sober.
feedback, and I appreciate what you guys do here. I think it's important. And I like the fact that you say that you may not have a huge group of people that listen, but they're loyal and they're engaged.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And all I did was email Bill twice. And I was half joking. I was like, hey, have you ever had someone that listens on? And you're like, well, not this month, but next month you can come in September. I was like, holy shit, he's invited me.
Yeah, it was
And
because I
then I
think
was freaked out for like a week. I was like, what did I do? And then I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna roll with it.
well, and you know that we get enough requests. The majority of the people that have approached us, have appeared. Some people, if just aren't a fit, whatever the
Mhm.
thing is, and it doesn't mean that it's not saying anything on our end or their end or whatever. But we, kindly tell people sometimes that we don't think it'd be a good fit, But I always same thing I told you, have you listened? You need to listen, because the last thing in the world we need is to somebody to get on here that's never listened to us before, and everything might be cool, but then it might offend somebody, and then it's going to just fuck up the entire conversation. So,
Yeah,
um,
no, I love that you're raw and real.
yeah, well, I mean, the thing of it is that, and Mike said it. Mike said it best. It was a few weeks ago, I think, that you said that we're not polished, we're not edited, so we don't do it out
Nope.
here. And I'm like, that's a good way to put it. And that was actually just a few weeks ago. You said that, maybe when we were on that other podcast, but
Yeah, I think it
yeah.
was when we were on that other one.
However,
That's where you
you
dropped
said
the
that.
F bomb.
Yeah, it was.
That's
Oh,
what I
yeah.
said.
Yeah, and that'll be shit. That should be out on. I think that'll be out on Monday. Monday.
Yeah, I think she said the 11th.
Yeah. So that. Yeah. I
I don't know why I remember that date,
don't
but
know.
that was bad. Sorry. Not really.
No, I know. I don't believe that one. But seriously, Gary, thank you. We truly appreciate it. Yeah, this is
Yeah, this was very
yeah, it's been a
cool,
lot of
man.
fun,
Yeah,
and
it's
I mean
very
that
cool for me
sincerely,
too.
man. You walked through that. It was just this whole, just a great story that how you told it through the steps, and I'm happy that you told it that way. But so I know you've heard the way that we end this, so it's
Oh
Mike's.
Oh, shut
yes,
the fuck up,
Yeah,
Bill.
it's
It's my
Mike's turn.
turn.
Go ahead, Mike.
I say it
He
right
knows
along
it.
with
He
it, but
knows
I
it.
won't.
He's heard
I
it.
know.
We're going to do it. All right, everybody, settle down. Here it comes. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Sober Not Mature. Gary, thanks for coming on, man. This was really cool. I had a great time tonight. As always, be kind to each other, be good to each other, do something nice for somebody else this week, and don't tell anybody about it. And now it's time, kids. It's time for you to fuck off. Then keep fucking off. Keep fucking off till you get to a gate with a sign on it saying you cannot fuck off past here. Climb over that gate, dream the impossible dream, and keep fucking off forever.
And I seriously say that with you every single episode. It's my
Yay!
favorite part.
It's one of my favorite parts, and like I said, even when I know what's coming up, and like this time he's like, he's heard it. Come on, shut up, everyone, shut up. Because he's also looking at the time. It's 9:27 real time or 9:28, whatever it is real time.
Yeah,
So
it is.
But seriously,
Hopefully you
Gary,
had your pizza.
yeah, we did. We both did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you,
Of
again,
course.
you do listen, man. I like that.
I do listen.
Yeah, you do listen.
And I remember.
And as always, this will be up tomorrow, so you can hear it. But thank
Cool.
you again, Mike. Obviously, I love you, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
I
And
love
Gary,
you too.
have a good night, everyone.
All right. Bye.
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 As always, thank you for listening to another episode of Sober, Not Mature. To access all of our content and interact with us, please visit our website, SoberNotMature.com. Thank you again for listening, and we will talk to you soon.